I'll volunteer with my group. It's number 4.
Number 4. Okay.
I guess we'll go next, number 5.
Okay. Okay.
Do I have to like say who was in my group?
No, you can say as much or as little as you want. You can talk us through it, or you can kind of just leave us a comment. That's what most people on Tuesday did. But
so, our group, we did pretty good, even though we know nothing about Harry Potter, but we did good. So our introduction, we were going to include the thesis, like introduce the main characters that we were going to talk about in our paragraphs, and then just like include how Snape was viewed by everyone and how he turned out to be like good all along.
Okay.
First was like how Snape was viewed by everyone, like both negative and positive. The second, we were going to talk about Snape's and Harry's relationship and how Harry's dad was tied in behind it. And then talk about more about the love-hate relationship when in a third paragraph about his undying love for Lily and how Snape changed over time. And the fifth paragraph was our conclusion. We're just going to sum up everything and restate our thesis.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a solid game plan. I would say probably flesh this out a little bit. If you were going to write it, I would say flesh this out a little bit more with kind of clearer ideas of what you're going to say, because the more you treat the outline, it's almost like pre-writing. It's a chance for you to go, all right, I want to say this, I want to say this, I want to say this, and figure it out and the order and how it's going to relate, so that then when you go to kind of wrap it up in prose, it goes smoother. And also, I tend to treat it as a goal sheet. So it's all right, I'm going to write my introduction section and my first point section, and that's my goal for today, and I'll get those written. And then when I go to write again, it's like, all right, I need to do point 2, so I'll just kind of glance at what, like, my last paragraph of point 1, and then look at my outline and just keep going. So it's, instead of having to reread the whole thing, which can be helpful, but so the more detailed, and some people don't write detailed outlines, like whatever works for you. I found the more I kind of outline my subpoints, the easier it is for me to write. So my first instinct would be to flesh this out a little bit. Also, you've got your thesis here first in your introduction, which technically you can put your thesis anywhere in the introduction. There's not a hard and fast rule, but traditionally it's the last thing in your introduction before you launch into the paper. And I feel like that's an easier way to do it, because you've got the it's inverted pyramid kind of structure. So it's like you start out more broad, and that would include things like introduce the characters, summarize your plot, which you'll get some papers you have to do that because you'll be analyzing a book that your book professor hasn't read. I've done that multiple times. So it's like, all right, I need to put a plot analysis in here or a plot summary in here for the professor because he hasn't read this book. So I need to give him a basis to work off of. So it's like you start there and kind of broad, and then you just go in more and closer to what you're actually going to talk about. And then you get to your thesis, and that's kind of like the point. And then from there you launch into the paper.
Another point that's, another take on what you just said about summarizing. I never summarize if I'm writing some kind of paper about a literary source or a movie, because a lot of professors will also tell you act like your audience has read and seen exactly what you've seen, rather than use the space to summarize, use the space to make your own observations and points about the media that you're writing about. So that also might be the case too. It's that's case by case basis, right?
It is. It depends on the class. Like if you're writing for a class, you would treat your audience as your professor as your audience. So whatever you can assume the professor knows, you can take as a given. So like if I'm writing a paper for Dr. Hofstadter on Roman de Silence, which is a medieval French thing, that was an assigned reading. He lectured on it. He knows what it is. I don't need to summarize that for him. He knows it. But if I'm doing what I did I had a class with Dr. Fitter, where he had us analyze any text of our choice that dealt substantially with war and compare and contrast it with 2 class readings. So the text that I chose was a book that I absolutely knew he had not read. So I gave him a plot summary for that. I didn't bother summarizing. What did I use? I used Erasmus and Henry V. So I didn't need to summarize those because those were class readings. He knows those. So I can assume knowledge on those. But for the material that I'm bringing in, I needed to give him a basis to work off of. There is a discussion about Harry Potter books in the chat. For the record, I'm pro book, anti-movie. At least as far as Harry Potter is concerned. Okay, do we have any other comments or kind of questions rising out of this outline or? No? Okay. I think we've got time to go over one more. If
I was in this group and I was going off of book knowledge. I did not watch, I at least watched one movie. I did not watch any of the other movies.
yeah, they mostly hit the same plot beats. I think they toned down some of Snape's unpleasantness in the in the films, but yeah, and that's why we kind of gave you a fan video, because we were like, all right, even if you don't know what's going on, this is going to give you enough to analyze this. Zaki, you said you volunteered your group, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll look at group 5.
So it's like pretty much the same thing here. We didn't watch the movies.
Mhm.
I think. Yo,
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
didn't
watch.
watch the movies.
Yeah, so we didn't watch the movies. So we just went completely off the
The
video.
video, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so all right, expansion of the thesis. Why the just, yep, negatively affect her, yes. That's full justify. Okay, so the thing with using questions are a good way of formulating answers, essentially. If you can formulate a question and then answer it, then you're kind of in good shape. So you might, like, this is a good start. I would say probably you need to answer these questions, or at least know what your answer to these questions is before you start writing.
Yeah.
So how does it contribute to his group?
That's
we
why
use
I'm more comfortable
questions.
with questions as a whole,
Yeah.
because like you can expand on it instead of just saying a statement and having to expand on that. So like questions.
Yeah, I thought it would be easier too for like us.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like, because the thing is, questions can help you figure out what you want to say.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, like, it's something to bounce off of. So if you can give yourself that helps. And these are good questions, because it's like, okay, why does he feel justified? Does he even feel justified? Is that even something that's entering his calculations? I don't know. There's an argument to be made on all sides, which is what's kind of fun and annoying, but very kind of fun about literary and film analysis, is if you can find something in the text to support your argument, then go for it. Like, it's totally legit. You can argue whatever. And it's a lot like fan theory and headcanon in that regard, which I find mildly amusing, because that is such like a lowbrow anti-snob thing. And academic tends to be thought of as this big highbrow thing. And I'm like, that's a very similar muscle. It's not the same, because you do have to support it. You can't just randomly decide, oh, this character is this. You have to support it, but it is similar. So like, as long as you can find something in the text to support it, then you're good.
I think the only thing I might add is where you have your Roman numerals, I might make a statement there, a guiding statement, and then put your questions underneath. Or opposite, maybe put your question there and then some potential answers underneath for the bullets. Like,
Yeah.
As far as organizational comments.
Yeah, because
opinions.
like each of these, like, this would be, the way this is organized is kind of like, these are coming across as subpoints, which they may or may not be. Like, these may develop into kind of like their own standalone points, but right now it's kind of like, okay, I have this section and I want to address these subpoints, but you don't really know what this section is at this point. So without the label, and you might know in your head, but if you don't write that down, it's very easy to forget. And then that's not going to help you organization wise, because then you're going to have a couple of subpoints that may each address their subpoint very well, but they're not tying into one broader point. So this is something I think a lot of you are running into with your personal statements, is each of your, like, you're doing a paragraph answering the question about the brainstorming question you guys had about fears and strengths, or strengths and weaknesses. And then there's another paragraph about fears, but it's difficult to tie them together. So that's where having like your main points. So it's like, okay, I want to make these 3 big points. Great, that's my base. And they're all feeding out of this thesis. Those all relate together. Great. And then your subpoints, it's like, all right, these all relate to this one point, which in turn relates to the thesis.
Yeah.
So then
Like,
they're just automatic.
I was thinking more of a, like, giving me my ideas for my synthesis, because I feel like they all like kind of build into like the thesis I created.
Yeah. And that's the goal. Like if you outline well and you make sure everything is tying into your thesis, and it's like, okay, all the points tie into the thesis, all the subpoints tie into their points, which means that they automatically all fit together as one whole, and you don't have to worry about that later. Like you don't have to worry about making that happen. It's happening automatically.
Exactly.
It's like a domino effect.
And Victoria, I know this is off topic, but I watched like the Hannibal movie, and it was trash.
Yeah, that one's not good. The book is very interesting. The show is excellent. That movie's not good.
Man, like
Silence of the Lambs movie is excellent too, but not the
what I'm
Hannibal.
saying. Like I went from Silence to the Lambs to this movie, and I was just like, man, this is bad.
That's a bad step down. Try the show. The show is excellent. I'm not sure where it's streaming right now. I don't know if it's streaming for free anywhere. You can pay for it on Amazon. I don't know if it's streaming free anywhere, but I highly recommend. That is a side conversation we had during our session. I'm sorry, everyone. All right.
I think it's on Hulu, the show.
Is it on Hulu? I don't subscribe to Hulu.
I think so. I knew it was somewhere because my brother told me to watch it. Sorry. Okay, off topic.
If it is, watch it, everyone. It's great, but I'm recruiting for my fandom right now.
Is it the same actor, or is it a different actor?
Different actor. It's Mads Mikkelsen.
Man, I don't know.
No,
I want
he
the
kills
same
it.
actor from Silence of the Lambs.
Anthony Hopkins is great, but Mikkelsen kills it. Like it's different. They're both equally good. They're just different. So
okay.
All right. Do we want to go over the one more outline, or do we want to switch? What do you think, Emily?
Can I just go?
Hmm?
Can I just go?
Who's talking?
It's me, Tian.
Oh, Tian. Okay. Do you know what group you were in?
I know the people, but I forgot the group's number.
Well, we looked at 5, 4, and 2, which means you're 1 or 3.
We're 1.
Oh, you know who you were? Okay. Is this you guys? Oh,
yeah,
yep,
that's us.
Names. You guys got busy, dang.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We kind of went a little overboard.
No such thing as overboard. You can always trim an outline. If it gets away from you, you can always trim it back. It's better to have too many ideas than not enough.
True.
Like, it was crazy.
So
do we just have to like explain like?
You can talk us through it, or we can just read it. It's up to you.
So our thought process for the introduction was, we look at the thesis, we thought, you know what? Let's use the most cliche thing ever, and we'll use tragic hero as the introduction. That's what we were going to use. So we went off by that. We then in the second paragraph split it up and like listed each reason.
So inspirational.
So I think, hang on. I think in the first body paragraph, we were talking about the bullying Snape and Door, and how it affected Harry, like the relationship between Harry and Snape overall. So we said that basically Snape was like a father figure or less to Harry. That's one main reason we said. We also stated the fact that he felt obliged to watch over Harry because he still has love for Lily overall. But we also stated the fact, we also put in the other point of view that Snape is also conflicted by the fact that this is the this is the son of the father who bullied the crap out of me during my school years. So we also introduced that conflicting point as well in the first body paragraph. And in the second body paragraph, we were going to talk about Harry's point of view of Snape and how he views Snape through his own perspective. And we said that it was a mentor relationship. It could be viewed as a mentor relationship between the two. And like in like the audience point of view. We also mentioned that Snape's actions of like his mentorship doesn't support like, you know, Harry's point of view as well. And the last one, we just said that maybe Harry was influenced by his peers to show that Snape was overall a bad person. Something to that extent. We were trying to figure out how to put that into perspective. And then in this third body paragraph, we were talking about Voldemort's influence over Snape and how it affected his morals overall and how he is as a person. It basically caused Snape to believe Voldemort, and he betrayed his own. He basically believed what Voldemort said, is basically what I'm trying to say. And he betrayed everybody because of that. And then the last body paragraph is why we explain Snape is a tragic hero. Is basically, we basically pointed out that the impact of Snape's sacrifice / death changes because this is how Harry and the audience overall, once Snape sacrificed himself, they realize and they understand, oh my goodness, he was actually trying to help. Even though some of the things he did was basically unexcusable, they still realize he tried to change as a person, and that could be labeled as a tragic hero. And this last point, I think I don't want to talk about because I think it could be. I think I was going a little off. I was going too crazy. But basically, I was trying to make a theme by saying that love was like something like, I don't know what I was trying to say. I don't know what the heck I was trying to say at the end. I think I was overly ambitious. I think I was being overly ambitious.
Okay.
Just ignore it. Just ignore it.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be a good thing, man.
Yeah.
I got way too invested into this for no reason, in my honest opinion.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with, as far as like as a tragic hero, something you could probably expand in arguing is because like his death recontextualizes a lot of stuff, but it's also mildly ironic that in trying to change, the best way that he can change is to continue wearing the mask of an unchanged person.
Yep.
Like he's put himself into a position that the best way he can help everyone is to continue
wearing this
do
facade.
highly morally questionable things, working for essentially a death cult, and that's the best way he can
that's
do what
literally
he wants to do and protect. So that's tragic as well, because it's like he can't really evolve. The second he does, he stops being useful.
Yeah, exactly. There's like really nothing Snape could have done in that situation. I mean, some people will obviously disagree with me cold-heartedly because, you know, I'm not a huge Harry Potter nerd, so I don't know this inside out. I am so sorry if I offended any of you guys who are like diehard fans. I just don't know the series that well.
No, I think you hit the most questionable thing that I've seen anyone say, and two of you guys have said it, is that is casting Snape as a father figure, which I don't buy. I see where you can make the argument, which makes it legitimate. If you can make the argument, then that's perfectly fair game. I don't agree with it. You would have to convince me, but that's the goal of this. Like that's an exercise.
I really like that it's its own paragraph with Harry's point of view of Snape. Because one thing that I was thinking about when we've been discussing this project is the editor of the video's point of view, but the thing that hadn't, like, making its own paragraph of the way Harry views Snape and then almost not debunking it, but then putting the reality, what Harry doesn't figure out until that later moment, I think is a cool structure, because it's kind of like your essay unfurls the truth.
Yeah. You could also make the argument that the video is following somewhat of Harry's perspective, because it's kind of like the first half is pretty much all of the villainous acts and all of the things that we've seen Snape do without context, which is how Harry was seeing it. And then we get the flip, where it's like, okay, we need to recontextualize this in light of what happened, which is essentially what happens with Harry in the last movie when Snape dies and he realizes and he gets access to that information. So you could argue that the video is following a similar perception, yeah, similar trajectory of perception to Harry. You could also argue against that, but there's certainly an argument to be made there.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, this is substance again. My instinct is not to outline by paragraph. I do not find it helpful. Emily does. So what works for you is essentially what concerns me. The reason that you will hear me railing against this is because a lot of people get stuck with it thinking in terms of 5 paragraphs. And so then they end up confusing themselves and confusing their readers by trying to put stuff together that doesn't need to be together in an effort to stick to 5 paragraphs. And you don't have to do that, especially in upper level writing. Like your last paper for comp, you do not need that 5 paragraph format.
Oh,
5 points, sure, but
we were trying to go for like, we thought this would probably be like 3 to 4 pages. To be honest. That's what
this
we were
could go
trying to
longer.
for. Because there was a lot of good reasons, a lot of good points we could have made, but we were just too afraid. Like, okay, maybe I think we're going a little overboard, and maybe we should lessen it a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a decision. Like there comes a certain point, especially there's a temptation once you get into like longer page limits where your professor's like, okay, I want an 8 to 10 page paper. That's a temptation to just throw in all the points, but it's better to have a few strong points than half a dozen kind of not half-assed, but kind of like, all right, well, that's a thing. So that's where prioritizing comes in. It's like, okay, what are my strongest points I can make here? And then if I have room for one of these kind of not as strong points because I need to make page count, then fine, yeah, bring it in. But it's better to have the stronger points. Okay, we should probably move on to the other half now. Yeah, the point, kind of like the point of all this is just to kind of show you like this is handy. It's pre-writing, it's a way of organizing thoughts. And there are other ways to do this, whether it be whiteboards, mind maps, or index cards, like whatever is going to work for you, do that just so you have a place to put your ideas and to figure out which ones are going to be useful and which ones are not, and so that you remember them. Because if you'll think of an idea while you're out walking and you'll think, yes, I will remember that idea. You won't. Accept that now, you won't remember it. So don't rely on your memory to help you with your papers. You got too much else going on. It's not going to stay. So make sure that it is documented in some manner that is going to help you going forward.
All right.
Okay.
Transitioning.
Yes.
So now we're going to talk briefly for the next 20 minutes or
About 20 minutes, yeah.
about citations and the importance of citations. I know we've been mentioning basically every time we have a workshop and also in our one-on-one meetings, the importance of keeping track of your citations, of writing down your sources, writing down your page numbers, writing your quotes. And the sooner you do that in the planning process, it'll be way easier when you actually be able to write, because you don't have to worry about having a great quote and losing the page number and then not being able to use it. That sucks. That is the worst. So the sooner you do that, the better. As far as for actually making citations, we're going to show you a couple resources that will make it a lot easier for how to format things, because you're going to be asked to either do MLA or APA, basically. There's another one that's I consider part of the big three. It's also the Chicago style. That's just because I'm biased because I'm a history major and we use Chicago style. But typically you're gonna have to use APA for more science courses and MLA for definitely English. And also it's sometimes a professor's fallback also. Yes, so we're gonna show you those resources for making those citations. Yes, does anyone have any questions before we start? All right, awesome.
All right, okay, we'll pull up. First thing we're going to show you here is Purdue OWL, which I feel like this is something that most of you are going to get directed to at some point during your composition time, either by a tutor or by a professor. This is kind of like the go-to guide for formatting, and they have a lot of different stuff about writing, but where you're going to use most is the formatting and style guide. So The site is unfortunately full of ads, so that's something you just have to tolerate, but they have guides for a bunch of, there's one now. Got guides for a bunch of different stuff. Like they've got APA, two different styles of APA actually, the MLA Chicago, IEEE, whatever that is, AMA and ASA. So it's kind of like the main ones that you're going to use. Certainly for composition, you're going to spend all of your time here with the MLA. And in here, you can find pretty much everything that you're going to need to know. There's the general formatting, which most of you probably know from high schools, just kind of like the general guidelines formulating of the paper, you know, like Times New Roman 12-point font and page size and headings. Double space, yeah, how all of that works. Yeah, there's more of those. But where you're going to spend most of your time really is going to be with citations. Don't feel like you need to memorize this, because again, depending on your discipline and depending on which class you're taking, and sometimes even depending on the professor, it's which one you use is going to be changing. I've had like MLA is the standard in English, but there are some English professors that don't like using it, so they use Chicago. Or they'll normally use MLA, but then you'll be doing an independent study and they'll go, MLA is not going to work here, just use Chicago. But I don't know Chicago. I haven't been using Chicago. Tough. Like, so don't feel like you have to memorize it. One, I don't think it's possible. And two, there's no point because you're going to be using different ones. So just make sure you give yourself the resources to help with your citation when you get there. Like I had a class with Dr. Fitzgerald once, and I was asking for help with my citations, and he was kind of sitting there like, I don't know, we'll have to look this up. And he helped to write a citation textbook. So like even the professionals don't remember all of it. So like the stuff about in-text citations, and it's kind of like, it's organized over here and then down here by headings. So it's like, okay, the author page style, how to cite from a known author, citing works from an anthology or periodical, citing works by multiple authors, like all the different things you would need to know. Citing books, again, like the basic format, books with one author, books with more than one author. So it's fairly easy to navigate once you're in here. And it's kind of, you can kind of treat it on an as needed basis. So it's like I'll normally do most of my citation last thing. I mean, I'll do my in-text citation as I go, but works cited, I'll do that kind of last and just run through here to make sure everything's looking the way it's supposed to be. That's, whoops.
I do it first.
I do it last. Like
because I usually,
whatever
if
works.
I'm too lazy to write, but I want to get some work done, I usually make my works cited page and make my like format everything. And then I do that and then I feel a little accomplished. And so I do that first.
See, I'll do that last because I know myself and stuff gets added. So I would rather just do it last thing so that it's kind of, so that I know this is the final count of things that I'm going to use. Like the giant independent study that I did, I was adding quotes from various different things until it was done. And when it was done, I just sat down at my dining room table with a stack of books, as well as like had online articles, but there were a bunch of physical books that I had to cite manually. And because they were physical books, I couldn't use a generator. So I just sat there for like an hour with this just stack of books around me, figuring out the citations, which sucked, but that was the last step. So that was kind of like, all right, I'm done. I don't really have to think anymore. I just have to format this and we're good. So it's, again, whatever works for you in terms of getting that done. And while I'm here, actually, before I flip the screen over to Emily, I'm just going to show you something I do that helps me a lot is I'll keep a source document for a paper. And so I'll get the works cited citation from either from a generator or I'll write it out manually, but I'll get that and I'll stick that at the top of the page. I didn't hear, but I'll usually put a link to the source if I don't have the physical copy. And then I copy and paste or retype all of the quotes that I think I'm going to use. And I usually have more than I'm actually going to use, but it's just kind of anything I see that I'm like, oh, that would be useful. I'll copy it out, put it here. I put what page it's from so I can cite it easily and so I can find it easily. Because like sometimes you'll have a quote pulled and you'll look at it and be like, actually, I think there was something else useful around that I could use. So you have to go back. So it helps to keep track of where the page is. And then I'll also, most of the time, I'll give myself kind of like a note of what I was thinking when I saw the quote. Because often like I'll stash a quote and then I'll go back and be reading and I'm like, I have no idea what I wanted to use this for. It's just gone. So I'll leave myself kind of a note, unless it's something really obvious, but I'll leave myself a note that's like, all right, this is how this ties into what I'm gonna say in this paper. All right, that makes sense. And this also kind of counts, and I split it out by source. So like one source equals one page and then a new source equals a new page. And this also kind of counts as pre-writing in the same way that outlining does, because you kind of, with doing this, it helps you to get an idea of what you want to say and the points you want to make, just kind of like in the back of your mind. So then when you go to outline, you read through this and you're like, yes, I can use that. I can use that. Oh, I was thinking that. That's a good point. And that helps you form your outline, which then helps you form your paper. So again, it's a domino thing. But at the very least, it helps you keep track of the citations you want to make and where they're coming from. So that's something to keep in mind. And now I'm going to hand the screen over to Emily. Assuming her Wi-Fi doesn't kick up again.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Positive thoughts, positive thoughts.
All right. So just want to go through a little bit about the Rutgers Library, the Paul Robeson Library. I think the best way to access this is just to Google Paul Robeson Library, and then it'll pop up. If you Google Rutgers Library, you'll just have to probably select at the top the Camden option to get Camden. Not that you can't do an interlibrary loan, because sometimes you could request items from New Brunswick or Newark and then they'll ship them to the Paul Robeson. So it's pretty convenient in that way. But it does a little handy citation button too. So we'll get to that in a second. So first, just a practice searching. Somebody give me something to search.
Like a genre or something, like a genre title or something else.
Kind of whatever. It's just, this is where you would normally, if you were researching something. So let's try the nature of evil in Harry Potter, shall we? I don't know, like maybe something like that. That's kind of, search terms are another learned skill that you kind of get better at as you go. Like I spent a lot of time, again, during my independent studies, doing searches about stuff like the character of Satan or the character of the nature of evil or agency, because that was another argument. I was like, how much agency does Satan have over his own behavior? So I was doing searches like that to pull up whatever. So usually it's connected to whatever you're researching. So it might include the title of what you're searching, along with kind of some keywords of ideas that you have that you want to look at. So
I searched Snape and Tragic Hero. Someone wrote their whole dissertation
on
existentialism in Harry Potter.
Oh, existentialism is complicated.
Wow. Huh.
Do you want to show them the filters?
Yeah. Okay, so when you do search terms, sometimes the easiest way to get exactly what you're looking for is to filter down your results, which are over on the left. The peer review journal option is really good because most of the time, if you have a professor asking you to find a scholarly article, they might say, or a peer-reviewed article, or they might just say something from JSTOR, which is one of the online databases that the Rutgers Library searches from.
Or academic sources, that's another term that gets thrown around.
But if you hit peer-reviewed journals, you know that it's definitely an academic source. I mean, if it's on the Paul Robeson Library, you're usually really good. So peer-reviewed is just an extra step.
Yeah, it means that someone else in that discipline has read it before it was published. So essentially it's been checked. So you know you haven't just got someone spouting off opinions. People have actually, who know what they're doing, have actually looked at it.
And available online, if you're looking for just online articles, online books. I mean, they also have listed physical copies that you can order off of the library website. But for this case, we could put available online. Creation date, because the library does have primary sources. They have a lot of newspapers, historic newspapers, and things like that. So if for certain search terms, you are going to get older sources. So if you're looking for and up-to-date information, I'd probably limit it to within 10 years, within 15 years. And then you can also do the language it's in, although typically most of things are just in English because imperialism. And then you have topics here as well, which is like Victoria said on Tuesday, like the subjects aren't as useful as the other ones.
Yeah.
The thing I think is the most useful is the year, or you can use research type to look up articles and apply the filters. There are not many results for this.
No, usually there are a lot more, but
I think also a tip is also sign into your net ID, because I've had it happen. Like I searched this and there's 3 results. If I were to sign in, there might be 10 results. It's kind of strange, but they always give you more if you're signed in. The last thing about this is just that they make the citations for you, which is the best part. So you might not even have to use Purdue OWL. If you hit citation right here, because you can email the article to you, send yourself the link, print it out. But if you hit the citation, and then you could pick whatever style you need, APA, Chicago, MLA, and it gives you the citation you put on your works cited page.
something to watch out for though is like, do try to double check it against Purdue OWL if you can, especially if you can't use the Rutgers citation engine. If you use like a citation machine or another one, double check it against Purdue OWL, because sometimes stuff gets weird. And like something I ran into is when I copy and pasted from the Rutgers engine for a paper, is it stripped out the italics in something like down here where it's where it says myth lore, that's supposed to be italicized, that's part of the formatting. And I've had it happen before where that actually got stripped out when I pasted it into my document, and my professor noticed and yelled at me for it. So keep an eye, like it's good to use the Purdue OWL just to double check, which is again part of why I do this last, because I will grab the works cited citation as I go when I find sources I'm going to use, and it goes into my source document. But when I go to make the actual works cited page, I double check them to make sure that something didn't get weird in the transfer.
Yeah, like this shouldn't be capitalized, and also it should be last name, first name. So like that's just 2 examples there.
Yeah, it's just being a little bit weird. So yeah. Also over here on the left, remember all filters is a handy button. Because right now, if you were to adjust your search terms, it's like, okay, I've only got 3 results here, I need to adjust what I'm searching. If you were to just type in a new search, all of the filters that you applied would go away. If you click remember all filters, they stay for every new search that you put in until you click it off.
Mm-hmm. All right, does anyone have any questions about the Robeson Library or the Purdue OWL? All right. All right, so Victoria already showed her source document.
Yeah.
All right, and all right, so we went over outlines, citation machines, briefly over how to search things.
If you're having trouble finding stuff, like the algorithm of the search engine can determine what you see. So something that helps if you're not finding something, because like the Rutgers library search bar pulls from all of the databases that Rutgers has access to, that you have access to as a Rutgers student. So that's pulling from everything, and it's an excellent resource. It's a good search engine, but sometimes you'll be like 3 pages and you're like, okay, I'm not finding anything useful. So what can help then is if you go into one particular database, like JSTOR is one, and use their search engine with the same search term, sometimes it pulls up something different. So even though the Rutgers library is pulling from JSTOR, just something with the search algorithms, it doesn't show up. So it helps to go into a specific database. And Google Scholar is another good thing. It's Google, but it only pulls from scholarly sources. The problem there is that sometimes it'll pull up articles that you don't have access to as a student, because most databases have a subscription fee, which you have access to a lot of them through Rutgers. So it's worth checking. Like sometimes, again, I'll pull up a JSTOR article through Google Scholar that just wasn't showing up anywhere else. And I'll be like, oh, that looks useful. I'll take a note of the name of it, log into Rutgers, go into JSTOR, and then find the article that way, which sounds really roundabout, but it's just to do with search algorithms and the way stuff pulls. So if you're having trouble finding stuff, that's a good way to switch things up. and the Free Internet Archive, which I have never had any luck with ever in my life. I know people that have, I haven't.
I found some good historic sources on there before, actually.
The only thing I've ever found in there that I used was stock footage for a film class. Everything else I've just not found anything good, but I know people that have, so it's worth trying.
All right. So if nobody has any questions, that's all we have for today. This is recorded and it will be posted online on Canvas. So if you wanted to replay any of our rambling.